on what we feel is an extremely important topic here at Mahopac Central School Districts, but not only Mahopac Central School District, county-wide, statewide, and throughout the country. Over the last several years, as social media has become a bigger and bigger part of our children's use, their use of computers, their use of their cell phones, we often see many concerning things, along with all the good things that come from the ability of using social media and the internet. We also see a lot of things of concern, whether it's things that our students are looking at, things that our children are playing on, different chats they're getting on, or different social media. And we thought it was really important to bring in an expert on something like that. So I'd like you to welcome Tom Roydell, who is a former inspector from the New York State Police, and worked in computer crime. So,
great. Great. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I appreciate that. Like me, you're a parent, and your nights are valuable. So I really respect and appreciate that. I'll tell you about me, but I don't want to take long on that. There's a lot of material to cover. For our purposes, when I conduct a parent presentation, it contains the same curriculum that you'll find and what your children will receive. And this is going to be, I just want to double check. When do we have the high school presentation specifically? It's Monday. Okay, so just for everyone's knowledge, I did 2 presentations today for 2 elementary schools. I'll have another tomorrow. I will then conduct presentations for the middle school. And lastly, it'll be the high school on Monday. So I'm going to hit grades 4 through 12. For our purposes, like I said, though, again, all this curriculum will be seen by your high school students. So without further ado, I want to get into it. And if you have questions, I really strongly encourage, give me questions, because a lot of this is Q&A and not death by PowerPoint. So here we go. A little bit about me. Like Tom mentioned, I'm retired from the New York State Police. I was an investigator there, but I started as a trooper way back in 1998. I served in that capacity, which is, most people seem to know what a trooper is, a uniform capacity for 10 years till 2008. In 2008, I think I might be losing my battery here. In 2008, I became appointed to the BCI, or the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, where the title there is investigator. And for our purposes, investigator is analogous to detective. So I handled the bigger cases. I dressed in fact, this very suit, which is getting old. But I dressed in this suit, handled the bigger cases, but I had my eye on the prize, which for me always, the crime unit, the computer crime unit. So in 2015, I was fortunate enough to have an opening and an opportunity. I was appointed to the computer crime unit that year. But prior to that, if you're reading along, I had to attain a cybercrime specialist position, which is also a trained position, and that's like an apprentice for our purposes. So I did an apprenticeship for 3 years, and it became full-time appointed. Lastly, and it's the most important thing, that I do, after being a father, I was part of the ICAC task force. That's at the top there. ICAC stands for Internet Crimes Against Children. It's a multi-agency federally funded program. It's a joint initiative between the FBI, the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services, and the New York State Attorney General's office. And for that, they deputized me as a marshal because we had to pursue the bad guys across state lines. As you know, the internet has no borders, so that's part of what we did. And to put it in plain language, I want to use the correct language though, what most people refer to as child porn is now referred to properly as child sex abuse material. We're talking about videos and images of children. And there are statistics, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but the statistics are high that those who collect can also become hands-on and target children specifically. So again, after being a father, this became the most important thing I've ever done. As part of my duties in the New York State Police Computer Crime Unit, they threw me in the deep end of the pool and told me I'd have to do speaking presentations. Well, I didn't know that, it wasn't in the brochure. But they threw me in the deep end of the pool in March of 16, and somehow I managed pretty well. So I can do most of this without the slides, but I keep the slides because it has the statistics in place that I need to get out there. So here it goes. A little of my presentation history. In addition to putting out these presentations for school-age children, I've taught at the New York State Police Academy. I've taught the New York State Office for People with Special Needs. and I've taught at different police agencies as well. In addition, I've spoken at colleges, so I'll do adult continuing education. I happen to find, though, probably the best impact I hope to have is in the younger set, because the education enables them to be smart on the internet, not make themselves into a victim or a suspect for that matter, because they're going to make a mistake they didn't know would be a bad idea. So quick warning, my next slide is what your kids see. It's going to be really loud. It's to get their attention. So be warned, it's going to be a little loud, but this is what they see, so it's what you see. All right, I want to tell them I'm not just a computer nerd. I race dirt bikes, so that's something I do, and all your kids pay attention after that, so pardon me for that. Okay, let's get right into this. I call these the internet considerations, and after a while, I peeled that back to just make it considerations. I think these are a good idea because the way we act online is kind of a reflection of who we are in person, right? So a couple things I want to put out there. Is it fact or opinion? When you encounter information, and on the internet especially, there's a lot of information. Is that fact or is it opinion? You betcha, it's both. How is the internet free? Who is on the other side, and why do we use the internet? Merriam-Webster, if you don't mind, I'm going to use Merriam-Webster for my standard definitions. Merriam-Webster will tell you that a fact is something that has actual existence. And it will tell you that an opinion is a view or judgment or appraisal formed in the mind about a particular matter. I found this interesting, and rather than talk about politics or religion, let's talk about the weather. AccuWeather and Weather.com are both reputable online sources for weather information. This might be subtle, but I think it has some relevance. You'll notice this is for Salt Point, New York. It's right near Troop K headquarters where I worked. It says that the temperature over here in AccuWeather is 50 degrees, and Weather.com says 51. That's a 2% variance. That's something empirical. We can measure it. I'd say that's likely fact. What I find interesting and patently unnecessary is over here, while they say it is sunny and high of 51, this one says plenty of sunshine, ideal weather for one of the busiest travel days of the year. Personally, I don't find 50 to be ideal weather for travel. I would tell you 72, or maybe even like this, with the windows open might be ideal. But the point in showing that slide, as boring as it might be, is that even in something as innocuous as a weather report, you're going to find the notion of persuasion or subjection. Consider how much information is fact versus opinion. So how is the internet free? And boys and girls, moms and dads, we know nothing is free. Your information is valuable, and it's what pays the bill online. For any reason that you use the internet, the party on the other side is persistent to get you to click their link or stay on their website. Back in 1996, B.J. Fogg, a behavioral scientist at Stanford Persuasive Tech Lab, coined the term captology. Now think about 96 versus now and how the internet was much in its infancy at that time. The nuts and bolts of what he alleges is that captology stands for computers as persuasive technology. And I've spoken to people at IBM about this as well. It's more likely built into software than hardware, but this theory holds that persuasion is an integral part of all things computer. So it's kind of like in its bones, if you will. I would say it more likely applies to things like AI, certainly, and web page construction, which can be done with AI, but mostly human-generated input. But I want to make this point to everybody, especially the younger set, that persuasion is always out there happening. I think our batteries might be running low. I'm not sure. I can switch them? Okay. No? Okay. Okay, basically, this is something to keep in mind, too. Whether you're at home or out in public, there's a good chance that everything we're doing... All right. I'm going to try this one instead. Is that okay? Okay, very good. Nearly everything we're doing is recorded. We carry cell phones on us, and your cell phones are very live. If they are a smartphone variety, chances are that you have an app or a set of apps that has microphone permissions enabled, all right? Additionally, if you're out in public, people are using their cell phones to make, let's say, TikTok videos, or they're recording a nature scene. You can be caught on video and or audio at any time in public, not just cell phones. There's also cameras on the side of commercial buildings, sort of thing. That is very strange. Bearing this in mind, it's another component of what I'm trying to drive home in being very mindful of what we post on the internet. Every internet transaction stores information, even if nothing is intentionally transmitted. So we are giving away our privacy on the internet. And one of the ways we do that is through the EULA or the EULA, the End User License Agreement, right? That's it. If you want to accept any app, at the end of it, there's that big long legal jargon. You have to accept that or decline it. Once you accept that, you are giving it permissions. And those permissions are going to enable that provider or that app manufacturer to track you very effectively. Internet servers are storing this information. So keep in mind, a server is a computer that provides data to other computers. Most kids are pretty good. They're pretty savvy with this stuff, but some still don't recognize that when you send a text to your buddy, it doesn't magically hop to that phone. It has to make a stop in what people call the cloud. It has to go to a server first. How do I know this? Well, in addition to conducting forensics on cell phones and computers and all of that, if we didn't find something because someone believed that they had deleted it effectively, we would get search warrants and get content from the online server. And the content could be that deleted image or that text or that whatever. So it's always going to two places, not one. And once it hits once, it's never gone. That's a good rule of thumb. I had probably skipped over it. Automated home devices record activity, and I'm going to get into that with the Internet of Things, but a lot of people have, let's say, a Google Home Assistant or an Alexa. Newsflash, if you didn't know, they are always live, always. Not just when you prompt them, they are always live, and that's been proven in my lab. So that is something to pay attention to. Identity. Many, many people will use biometrics, and that's something uniquely identifiable. Could be your retina, could be your face. Thumbprint, it could be your fingerprints. Any of those things that once you install them on your phone, they are also on a server. Effectively, you could be giving people an entire set of fingerprints, a photo, an image recognition quality photo of your face, and even a retina scan. And think about how much privacy you want to retain for yourself. So just using biometrics is furnishing the internet with that information. This is interesting to me. Location is updated. I had the good fortune of getting an advanced forensic training by a gentleman who had 30 years in law enforcement and was a Notre Dame professor. That gentleman was very prudent with his phone, as am I. I don't use Wi-Fi. I don't use location services. I'm very, very careful how I use that phone to avoid being tracked. We used what's called an advertising ID. And an advertising ID is something on every personal electronic device. And it's a profile on your usage, your cookies on the internet, the things that you're interested in. That advertising ID is utilized for the purposes of targeting you for advertising. What's interesting is we were able to use this guy's phone. We used the forensic software he trained us on, and we located him on the second floor of the admin building at Notre Dame. And the way we did it was from the artifacts found from the advertising ID. How many here, we can get a show of hands, have you driven by a Starbucks and you might get an ad for Starbucks or a coupon that pops up because you're nearby? Those advertisers and those providers can ping your phone. And when I said this to the kids, they know what a phone ping is. I would hope that you guys know what that means too. I'll give you an example. In order for a police officer to ping a phone, he's going to usually need what's called exigent circumstances. I can name two. I had a kidnapping, we pinged her phone, and we had a robbery, and we pinged that guy's phone. And what that means is you're going to triangulate, you're going to locate them based on a signal sent out to that cell phone. All these app providers, they don't need any of that. They can do it because it's in the EULA, and they can ping your phone and locate you, and we've done it forensically. So you can be tracked just by advertising ID, something to keep in mind. Your actions are priceless, whether you use thumbs up or thumbs down or emojis. It tells a lot about you. Algorithms are on the internet, and that is code, basically. It's software, it's programs that are used to achieve what's called data mining. They want to know, and I love it. I'm on social media, I'm not afraid, but I never answer those questions like, hey, name that song that was playing when you were a senior. Or what was, the third picture in your camera roll. What is that? All you're doing is indexing your camera roll for, let's say, Facebook or Instagram or whatever entity is asking. You're indexing your camera roll, which they have permission to look at. And you're also telling them it's like mother's maiden name. You're giving people the capacity to figure out your passwords and to know all about you in a social engineering fashion, right? So they can keep track of where you're going, and now they can figure out your life a little bit better. I think it's pretty obvious we're giving away a lot there. Your time on a website and where you go on the internet does include cookies, and that's a small part of a file that's like a breadcrumb. And that's how they track your activity where you go on the internet. So here's the addiction slide. Teenagers do have the highest risk for substance and behavioral addiction. Most of their time as it pertains to cell phones is spent on text messaging. Sleep deprivation occurs. I even had some last night. My silly dog woke me up. He gets skittish, and I had to go comfort him, and it was early in the morning, and I ended up looking at my phone, and that's what we do. And because of that screen time and that blue light and all of that, it disrupts your brain waves. I had a little trouble getting back to sleep, but we all do it. I think it's a matter of degree. The sleep deprivation occurs. Some never turn off their cell phones, and this is based on what they admit, so it's probably higher. 27% between ages 11 and 14 admit that they never turn off their cell phones, which increases to 33% between ages 13 and 14. And lastly, addiction is highest for those who obtain their first cell phone before age 13. However, total time spent on cell phones does decrease with age. So I may have mentioned before, maybe I didn't, part of my education at Ohio University was I actually wanted to major in psychology. I didn't. I majored in journalism, but I got a minor in psych, and I love it. Schadenfreude, or Schadenfreude, the German. It's from Sigmund Freud, and it means enjoyment obtained by the suffering of others. And I think it's fair to say we all have it. It's a matter of degree, right? But if someone has it a little too much, maybe that's someone you got to watch out for. You ever notice the videos that go really big, or someone usually getting hurt or failing at something? Well, that's what, that's what tends to have the popularity. And in the journalism world, that old expression does stand. If it bleeds, it leads, right? So if something shows misfortune, for whatever reason, people are going to click on it. And sadly, that directs a lot of the behavior of the younger set who don't have enough, frontal lobe development to know that you can really be hurting people if you engage in things that are dangerous or dares. And again, I might reference any apps, maybe TikTok comes to mind, where they keep having challenges. What are they based in? What are we having people do? And what risk does it put you in terms of legal risk, moral risk, or physical risk? This is interesting, and I think it's concerning. I don't know if others see it like I do, but here goes. Something called the Internet of Things. It's the networking capability that allows information to be sent and received from objects and devices such as fixtures and kitchen appliances using the internet. As many as 50 billion, not million devices will be connected to the internet by the end of the decade. 50 billion. I'm wondering why, and this is just me, I'm wondering why I'd need to have my refrigerator connected to the internet. Short answer is I don't. I also don't need a home assistant. I can go to my phone and use that. I also don't need my thermostats connected. And let me just tell you, and this is unique, I'll mention this, but I won't go into this depth with your kids. I'll tell it to you. There's something called a log file with every internet transaction, and that's something that is forensically discovered. And I looked at lots of them, and I tracked a lot of bad guys with it. That log file could include, I don't know, when you leave your house in the morning and your house is automated and you give it a direction, or you're leaving the house and maybe you give it just cursory direction. It knows that when you leave at 6:05, it turns the temperature down. It then opens your garage door, right? It then your camera, if you have an automated or an IP camera, that's connected. Let's just say 3 things. It's going to keep a log file, like a list of what you're doing and when you're doing it. Let's think about that. And I'm telling you, as the forensic guy in the lab who's seen it, left house, or temperature down to 68 degrees at 6:05. Door opens at 6:07. Down the driveway at Guess what? I used a Fitbit tracker to track the steps of a guy who stabbed the wife in his interface and killed her. A Fitbit tracker. And his steps, we got our steps in, he got his steps in. We used an app to track and shore up the prosecution for that. This is real. All these All these things that we give away in the name of what we think is automation or advancement also have the capability. Well, in our case, we were able to track a murderer. I'm grateful for that. But for the rest of us, because the majority are not murderers, for the rest of us, I really question the need of all the connectivity of everything we have. Is it necessary? All right. This changes and is pretty fluid. What you guys might be surprised at as this, not that there's about 8 billion people in the world, but rather that there's 5.3 billion of that 8 billion online. I'm a late adopter. If you know that marketing term, it means I don't get the latest, greatest. I didn't get a cell phone till 2005. You know, I'm one of those guys, right? Drive old cars. Ironically worked in computer crimes. I don't know. But long story short, I find it amazing that more than half the world's population is online. When you consider very, very young and very, very old, my father doesn't own a computer, for example, I find it astounding that probably 65% now is online. So what you put online can reach most of the world. Top 3 social networks, and this is old data, I need to update it. This is by estimated unique monthly visitor. Facebook has 2.9 billion. Instagram has 1.4 billion. YouTube has 2.6, and WhatsApp has 2 billion. If you're doing the math, obviously that adds up to a lot more than 5.3 billion, so I'm sure there's duplication. But let's think about this. Mark Zuckerberg, if he still is hanging around Facebook or Meta, whatever they call it, happens to own Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. So 2 billion, 2.9. Let's even say, because I have Instagram and Facebook, let's cut out the duplication for Instagram. Let's just go 2.9 plus 2. 4.9 billion of the 5.3 billion? I'm just putting the dots, I'm making them connect here, I hope, right? We automate all these things. We have log files of when we come and go. It's listening to you all the time if it's an automated home device. And one guy named Mark has everybody's information. Let's think about this.
Once you post your image online, you can't take it back. Anyone can see it. Family, friends, anyone. Remember, think before you post.
That's a good all ages video, I think. And if you noticed, when the picture came down, it was the sound of a mouse click. Nowadays, most kids don't even know what a mouse is, so I just tell them it's the same thing as a screen capture. You put that picture out there one time, even to your buddy, that phone that he has or she has now just became a server itself, because I guarantee you if that was a scandalous picture or something maybe you don't want others to see, that's going to go viral. They're going to share it. Sexting. Sexting is the sending of sexually suggestive photos of the self or another, and also videos, by means of a cell phone or other electronic media. New York State penal law, there's mainly 2 laws that apply to the police prosecution, the people's prosecution of trafficking illicit images or child sex abuse material. One is possessing a sexual performance by a child. This is when a person knowingly has in his or her possession or control, or knowingly accesses with intent to view any performance which includes sexual conduct by a child less than 16. That's an E felony, which is punishable by 1 to 3 years in prison for each image or video convicted. Down here, promoting a sexual performance is similar. However, it's when knowing the character and content, he or she produces, directs, or promotes any performance, which includes sexual conduct by a child less than 17. That is a D felony with 4 to 7 years in prison. I cannot explain this in clear enough language, and actually what we view, those of us who've had to prosecute and investigate child sex abuse material, is so bad that the proper way to describe it is we get what's called vicarious trauma. So it's inappropriate for me to even use language to describe it. It has to be very academic. Every time an image or a video is made, a child is a victim. Yes, ma'am?
Is that people of any age, or like kids, aren't teenagers, sending that on their phone? Is that applicable to them?
That is one of the best questions, and it's perfect. And the question is, and if no one heard it, is that applicable to any age? Like, let's say our kids have it on their phone. It is a complicated answer, and it's an answer that will change, and unfortunately, that's out of my control. A couple things about that. When it comes to New York State criminal procedure law, we have what's called culpability, right? And you lack culpability at a certain age. You've heard of bail reform. Along with that came what's called raise the age. So the age at which people can be charged for crimes in the state of New York has been raised. That said, and I'm not hedging my answer. I have to carefully answer this for you. I want to teach children that we in the community, including parents, teachers, and police officers, which I was for a long time, regard them as those who are to be protected, right? And I don't want them to be victims. At the same time, pedophiles can start at a young age too. For our purposes, I don't know of anyone under the age of 18 who's been charged with possession or promotion. So that's the answer. As it pertains to how these things are dealt with, it becomes a police matter, and we want to contain and we want to educate, because they're too young to understand, I took a picture of my whatever and I sent it to my friend, it's silly. And that's often how they see it, because they're not developed that way. We had a case, I won't name the school. This is going on the internet, by the way, so the school might be listening. But in my operational area, we had a school, and it was rampant sexting in 4th grade. And I had that prior to being a computer crime unit investigator, so I handled that personally, non-forensically, and we had to have the right approach there, because there was no intention to hurt another. They weren't grooming someone to be human trafficked. It wasn't that. But at the same time, it's the internet. And these people when I say these people, I'm talking about pedophiles who use everything at their disposal, including facial recognition, to track their victims, because they collect and they collect and they collect. So for our purposes, the kids are seen as victims. In the past, it has been done that we want to give them the scare of don't do it, because you become a suspect too. You could be considered a sex offender. That's not a bad lesson too, because this lesson, although I've taught it as young as 3rd grade with the sexting, this lesson is mostly for the high school age people, and they're getting very close to that point where they're going to be chargeable if they're engaging in behavior like that. But for our purposes, we need to teach them to not become victims. Even the sassy dances being done on all those apps, you'll see the video I have coming up soon for sexting. It's a good all ages video again, but it's remarkable. If you send this much, I'm talking about a crop top, right? And something off the shoulder, a pedophile will pick up on that and then groom you or commit like sextortion. You know how sexting is a contraction of sex and texting? Sextortion is a contraction of sex and extortion. They will use the little bit they have on you to embarrass you into sending more. It's typical grooming behavior. So that's a big part of it, and that's a fantastic question. Thank you. Here's the statistics. These blow me away, and if I mentioned it, I'm sorry about that. I think I'm going to stand right here. I don't know if I mentioned this in addition to my pedigree. I'm the father of 2 girls. And when I joined this unit, they were 7 and 9. I mean, I own this material pretty well because it hits me at home, okay? 75% of teens say that sending sexually suggestive content can have serious negative consequences, yet this breaks my heart. 22% of teen girls say they have sent or posted online nude or semi-nude photos or videos. And 33% of teen boys and 25% of teen girls say, that's those who admit it, right, that they have had nude or semi-nude images or videos originally meant to be private shared with them. What does that mean? someone sending their boyfriend a nudie pic or vice versa, and I'm making it light of that. But that is going to go viral, and we all know it. And that's what inevitably happens. And the problem is, I can't condone it in any way, shape, or form. But let's say, in terms of their culpability, they didn't mean harm. They meant to share that privately. The problem is, it's like swimming in the ocean. There's sharks out there. If that gets seen by one pedophile or a person who's inclined to collect, they are very, very focused on collection. So these statistics are disturbing to me. Best video in the whole presentation.
I can't stop thinking about you. Anyway, you've been waiting for this for a while. I wanted to give you something special.
That's not Zach.
Who are you? Why are you doing this?
Oh, do you see all the files? Anything private you share online can be used against you. If someone demands sexual images from you, even if you're embarrassed, and this is why we put out the message that we think you're a victim, if you're doing this at a young age, please stop immediately and report it. Very true, and again, this is reserved only for the parents' presentation. We have looked, are people relatively computer savvy here? Like, you know what a gigabyte is and so forth? They collect in terabytes, the pedophiles. We'll go through 1 million images as nothing. And in them, not all are what's called chargeable. They don't rise to the level of the crime, but they're close. So we have to scrutinize and go through those. They all collectors of this material categorize it. And if they know the name, they use the name, but they'll describe it. And let me just give you an idea. They describe most of them by age, and that age at the end of my career is starting to be described in months, not years. This is a very serious thing. It leads to hands-on. It leads to human trafficking. It's the worst thing I've ever had to see, and it's the most important mission I ever took on, again, after being a father. I take it very seriously. I want to impart to all the boys and girls who will hear it that we review you as potential victims, not suspects. So again, I'm looking right at you because you asked the best question. You know, it's very important that they know that. Who was on the other side? It could be this guy. You thought it was the other guy. It's not. It could be AI, and increasingly we're seeing a lot of proliferation of AI emerge on the internet, not just in writing your essays, which a lot of kids are using it for, but in engaging in chats. If you go, I use a lot of online sources for purchasing motorcycle parts. I race dirt bikes, as you might know. A lot of times, I'm not even asking for it, but I get a chat bot, and those chat bots are pretty... Hello? There we go. Those chat bots are pretty good, but they are mostly AI. It's rare to get a person on the other side. So these cases are close to home. I don't know if you've heard of this. I really hope you did. 2021, August, the year I retired, I had the opportunity. I don't know if you can read that. I'll just call it the FedEx rapist case. This is just miles away from Troop K headquarters. For my purpose, and I look at it because I'm pleased. You have to keep in mind police work is reactive. I'm pleased for the result we got. I'm not pleased at what happened, but the result. We had information regarding, and I'm always careful to look at what I can talk about. Yep. Charges of rape, criminal sex act, disseminating indecent material, and forcible touching. This is a FedEx driver, and he groomed his victims through social media. And you can guess the apps. But a lot of the apps that have the dancing and have the girls do the sassy poses and whatnot. And he didn't just have one. This is where it's a good thing. I'm telling you it's a good thing for a reason. The main victim we had was 13 and was excellent as a cooperative witness. I had the opportunity not only to conduct the forensics, but I got an opportunity to coordinate the sting, the undercover, to get him to a house where we took him down. And by took him down, I mean took him into custody without incident, of course. But after she came forward, as is the case with many sex crimes, many other victims came forward, and he was starting to pressure her into bringing additional people. This is real. This is right up in, I believe, are they calling it Millbrook? They're calling it Millbrook, if you know where that is. It's not too far away. I handled that case, and it was a real privilege to be able to, I dealt with the victim forensically, I dealt with the phone, and I dealt with the operation. It was great. Cyberbullying, on a lighter note, although I think cyberbullying is the beginning of a lot of bad activity for kids, especially with the ease of the internet these days. Everyone seems to know what it is, but I think it's underrepresented in the law, and I think it's certainly underrepresented in terms of how much we're able, not willing, but able to do about it. It's the internet or other communication devices to spread rumors or gossip, to post harmful or cruel texts or images, steal passwords, or harass or threaten with mean or bad language.
Lindsay, you're up.
Today we're going to talk about Patty. Patty's best characteristics, she's stupid. Stupid and ugly. Everything she does is ugly. Watch her eat. Watch her stuff her face. Look at her. Greasy hair, dirty fingernails. It makes me want to vomit. Her dad doesn't work, they have no money. That's why she wears that nasty pink sweater. Everyone hates her, even the teachers, and they're supposed to like everyone. Get a life, Patty. Thank you.
Okay, now don't be upset when I tell you that people inevitably smile or chuckle through that. And I'd like to think they do because it's ironic. That's a crazy thing to see. But that's how people act online. And the reason is they believe they're anonymous and they're cowards. Problem with cyberbullying, as opposed to back in my day when a real bully is someone you'd have to meet. Done on the World Wide Web, so it goes worldwide. The internet never closes, so this can be going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And cyberbullies can be at least temporarily anonymous and recruit the help of unknown friends, in quotes. Those unknown friends tend to be fake IDs or fake personas made up by the cyberbully, so one person could be 10 or 20. Because they often act alone, although they do gang up with people at times. What to do, and it's very important that kids have resources. I'll mention at this point in the presentation to the kids, if I haven't already, my parents were teachers, and I hold it in very high esteem. And one thing that teachers and police have in common, in addition to not being especially high paid, we do the job for the reason of wanting to take care of people, and specifically children. We care. And if you don't believe me, boys and girls, I promise you this, your teachers are all what's called a mandated reporter. So it's even their job. And that means if they hear anything, if they have any information regarding to anything that might hurt the physical, mental, or moral welfare of a child, they're going to report it. It doesn't always mean to the police. It could mean to the school authorities. It could mean to get someone addressed who might be dealt with suspension or expulsion, but it could also be a police referral. You need to report it. So do not respond. It escalates. Save the evidence. And like I said, report it and tell that trusted adult. If you do witness it, the same responses apply, obviously. And of course, everyone knows if you're in immediate peril to contact the police, usually via 911. If you have a school resource officer, which this school does, which is wonderful, and you happen to be at school, that's a great, great asset for you. Internet threats. Here we go. All right, slides are working. This is a natural segue to me anyway from cyberbullying, because I think if you're inclined to engage in that behavior, it could escalate to this, all right? A person is guilty of making a terroristic threat, and you can read the rest, I'll get down to it. When they basically, I gotta say this carefully, there's specified offenses. It's assassination or kidnapping or murder. And you don't have to have the means to do it, that's what the circle part is. You don't have to have the means nor the intention of actually doing it. So if you call in a bomb or a shooting threat and you don't even mean, yeah, I was just trying to get out of a test. Oh, I was just kidding around. It is no defense. It's a Class D felony, which is punishable from 4 to 7 years in prison per convicted count. This is a good one. I'm thinking of taking this slide out, but I end up talking about this slide. I talk about it in a school setting, so I encourage people to look into it. This is from 1919, and I always remember that old expression, you can't cry fire in a crowded theater. I love the First Amendment a lot, and I want to protect free speech, but it ends here when it comes down to threatening assassination, kidnapping, or murder, right? The case from which that sprung, that old expression of you can't cry fire in a crowded theater, came from Schenck versus US. So if teachers or anyone with a lot of time wants to look into that, that's an interesting bit of case law regarding that. So this is actually from the twilight years of my career back in 2018, and this is common knowledge. I live in the town of Dover, and at the time I was attached to Dover Schools Safety Committee. So I'm working in the lab, and I get a text from the safety coordinator that says there's a bomb threat at Dover Schools. So I get permission, and my boss gives me permission to respond, and I respond in an unusually fast manner in an unmarked police car 2 towns away to my daughter's school. And I watch my daughters get evacuated, and they're in their stands. And I won't tell you everything, but there's certain measures we take, and then maybe there's drones involved and so forth. And because we're there and we're outside and the kids are congregated in the stands by the football field, we turn our attention to the tree line. And why is that? Well, you might make a bomb threat, not to blow up the school, but to put the kids in one place to be shot. So we check the tree line. Then we have 3 bomb dogs join us. Why? Because Dover is a long school, not vertical, and we can do it quicker. I join one of the handlers and I clear 1/3 of the school. Guess what? No bomb. But it doesn't end there. That very night, a Snapchat post prompts shut down Dover Union Free School District schools. So now the Snapchat, we went from a bomb threat to a shooting threat same day. And because I'm the guy I am, a concerned parent had taken a screenshot of the Snapchat post and sent it to me, like almost making it viral, but I'm like, I knew who it was. So then we engaged in an investigation into that. And conveniently, of course, that closed New Milford schools. New Milford, Connecticut, it's just over the state line from Dover. So in the span of, not even 24 hours, we had a bomb and a shooting threat. And guess what, boys and girls? It was all a joke, or I don't even know if it's a joke. I will tell you what it was. We had a cooperative effort between ourselves and the state police and the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office, and we found the culprits, 16 years old and 14 years old. They didn't have the intention. They did not have the capability. Then why is it a big deal, Tom Reudel? Why is that a D felony? Because students, parents, teachers, paramedics, fire, everybody takes it seriously, because in these days, there's a school shooting with regularity. We live in a time where, when I grew up, it was the Russians might bomb us. Like, literally, that's what it was, and we did under-the-desk drills. That's how old I am. I'm really old. These days, a school shooting's a real thing, and there's lockdowns. It's a real thing. And the problem is this: those responding to the threat experience potential danger in their response, and real emergencies have less resources available. So I will canvass your students the way I do at every presentation, if I have enough time. And I'll say, how many here have grandparents who might have a life alert? I'll get some hands. And how many have a loved one who has diabetes? And I'll get some hands. How many here have someone they care about who works in a bank? And I'll get some hands there. I say, guess what they have in common? In the event of something called in like a bomb or shooting threat, so you call in a bomb or shooting threat, all these services are going to stage close to where that is to prepare for casualty. So your mom's getting held up at the bank, she's hit the silent alarm waiting for police, but the police are further away towards that school, and your mom gets shot during the course of the robbery. Your grandma or grandpa has a stroke or maybe a diabetic emergency, and the ambulance is just far enough away that maybe they die because of your joke that, hey, I was just kidding. It's not funny at all, because it's going to cost lives, and we live in a time when these things are actually real, so we can never take it as, it's probably nothing. We never take it that way, ever, because we can't. What to do if a threat is observed online? Very similar to cyberbullying. Do not respond. Do not forward it and save it, report it. Report it doesn't mean tell your buddy, it means tell a trusted adult. Usually you might be in a school setting, feel free to tell a school administrator or any adult there. They will make the appropriate referral. So why do we use the internet? We certainly learned that during COVID and when we had to be quarantined, do remote learning on the internet, which is very handy. I was not able to remote to work, would have been neat, but I couldn't. But a lot of us were, so that was another advantage to the internet. Use it for shopping. I buy my dirt bike parts. Entertainment, I have a YouTube channel. I put dirt bike videos up and things like that. So it's great. But unfortunately, those same internet highways we travel are traveled by criminals who use it for stealing, burglary, selling stolen things, human trafficking, and crimes against people. So just like a gun is a tool, right? I used to have a gun on this very suit, and it has my suit worn out here, and it'd always get the kids' attention, and I'd say, how many are afraid of my gun? And a couple inevitably would be honest and say they're afraid of my gun. Well, that's unfortunate. My gun never killed anyone. It never pulled its own trigger. It never jumped out of its holster and did a bad thing. And the internet is just like that. It's the actor behind it. The gun, in my purpose, in my use, is to save the life of me or another person. That's what it's for. Simple. The internet, for me, is for education, curiosity, boredom, shopping, things like that. Unfortunately, we're not all the same. I came from a law enforcement perspective, so I've seen guns used in the worst way possible, and we've seen it all the time. I've also seen the internet used in a horrible fashion to make people into victims. So you need to know, just like I'll use another analogy, the street. The street's handy. The street got me here today. This is my third school today. I was able to drive here. How convenient we have a street, right? But if you don't know how to cross the street or operate in the street, you can get run over, right? It's only as good as the people using it, and we have to look out for those who are either careless or looking to do us harm. So make smart choices, boys and girls. If you don't want it on a billboard, you don't want it online. Future opportunities of all sorts will look at your internet presence, including the state police, including any place that has good teachers, including if you want to be a nurse. They're going to look at your internet presence, I promise you. Anonymity means that there are pretenders, people persuading you and fooling you, and there are criminals out there. Once it's posted, it's permanent, and nothing is free. And then 3 paragraphs, and it's question time, if you guys have the energy, and I hope you do. Computers and cell phones store information which could be inaccurate, outright fabricated, increasingly, or downright correct. Internet servers store this information. Information is sourced 2 ways, human and computer-generated input. And remember, just because you close the lid on your laptop or power down your phone or just shut off the screen, you might go to sleep, but the internet does not, and neither do the algorithms crunching away at all your data. And whether you intend to achieve viral exposure or discrete anonymity, the internet never forgets. And I hope I didn't kill you with PowerPoint. Now I have questions. Time for questions. Somebody break the ice, please. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. That is a great question. The question is, let's say he sees his daughter's phone, he visualizes, what appears to be cyberbullying there, right? Do you contact police or the school? My answer is going to lean toward you would contact the police. And the reason is, it gets down to an issue of, did these things occur at school? It comes down to jurisdiction, certainly, right? Is it a school matter or is it a police matter? I would lean toward that. If you have, and I would direct you towards that school's resources, and I know in the Mahopac schools, the resources are vast and they're very good here. Consider consulting with the school. Just because of who I am, and maybe known each other a little while, I would always recommend a police contact, at least for an inquiry, because we can make referrals as well. That's how I would lean. Yes?
Can you talk about swatting?
I can talk about swatting. Here's what's interesting. I have not, and I always speak to what I can from fact or direct knowledge, okay? I have not engaged in cases of investigating swatting, but basically what I know, it's very similar to terroristic threat, and the problem with it is we don't necessarily know how to curtail that any better. The problem with it is we also don't know the target, you know, because are you trying to get someone in trouble, or are you trying to get police out of the way so you can commit a crime somewhere else? So it's always a question of what they're after. Same things apply, yes. I did hear about this. In case no one could hear it, we had a recent incident, and by we, I think it's we at large. It went countywide. We're in Putnam. We did go up to Dutchess. I heard about this, even being retired. I'm in the know a little bit. The swatting seemed to be going viral, if you will, and going to different states. For whatever reason that's happening, the same processes are engaged. I promise you the computer crime units are in on that. A lot of us, especially with the federal attachment to task forces, are going to use resources in, I don't have to name them all, but there are 3-letter agencies, and we use those resources in order to do online undercover, which I've done in the past. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, if you don't mind repeating that, it seems like police went to certain schools in the county and not others. I can carefully and probably assuredly tell you that was done very knowingly, based on the information they could rule in as plausible or credible, and information they could rule out as not credible. So that was done to kind of narrow down, you know, the choices they had for investigative leads. You're welcome. I've done it. I've killed you with PowerPoint. No more questions. Any questions, please feel free. The swatting basically is when someone will falsely report a crime in progress, usually of a violent nature, at a certain location, which will make the police swarm that area because it's rather serious accusation of what's happening. Not unlike, like I was saying, a terroristic threat of bomb or shooting threat. And when the police go there, they're either intending, and this is what's interesting and it's still new to me, I don't really kind of get the mindset. I think you're intending one of two things. One, you're trying to harass the people who are the subjects of, hey, those people over there are shooting guns and I heard a woman scream, okay? So you're gonna get them in trouble. Or, this is what I think it's more like, because I've seen this done and we've done undercover operations on this. We've had instances in which people will try to give us tips and then see how we respond, and really those people are trying to gather intelligence on how the police respond to things in general. What cars are gonna come out, and in my opinion, and again, I'm careful to render that, a plausible explanation for a lot of it is it's the tactics, the response tactics of responding police in order to probably perpetrate in other areas, if you know what I mean. So there's no good purpose to it. It's not the goofy kid in our day, you know, if you called in, there's a bomb in the school, you were getting out of a test. Yeah, it's still nefarious. These days, it's way more prolific, so it's I apologize for the mic here. I don't know why it cuts out. Any other questions? I hope I do have some. Yes, please. Sure. Yes. Awesome. Oh, did they like it? Good. I'm glad to hear it. Oh, that's good. I love it. And you're shell shocked. I know. Right. Right. Sure.
I understand the constructive press. They're not on social media at all, with the exception of halfway through the first year of the pandemic, we allowed them to have kids messenger.
Sure.
It's one of the best friends mom asked, and we monitor it.
Of course.
But we have no intention of getting them on any social media anytime soon. But we do have a 10-year-old with diploma grade 5. She's going to be starting middle school before. So, eventually we will. Never TikTok, hopefully, but I'm sure in the years to come, there'll be other things.
Of course.
But with your own two girls,
Right.
how did you just kind of gauge for yourself
Oh, wow.
when social media or my phones? Because we're not there, and all they tell us
Wow.
constantly is everyone at home has a cell phone. Like it is.
I appreciate, I'm only repeating this because they're doing a live feed. I'm just getting this audio into that. No, that's okay. So that when that cuts out, it's important that I get that. The gist of it is you have younger daughters, one of whom is going to go to middle school, right? 4th and 5th, and how do you gauge when is right for social media, when is right for smartphones? Oh boy. Well, if you haven't figured out, I try to put a lot of me into this. Son of two parents, a psychology minor. I've worked in ICAC. I have two daughters. Okay. I'm a big proponent of great parenting. Most of what drives the business, what gives me a pension as a police officer, was a failure to parent that it did not establish boundaries for behavior. And then they become the school's problem, then they become the police's problem. And I've seen it. I had 23, almost 24 years in police work. I saw I could tell you stories. I saw kids, your daughter's age, grow up to be horrible people. And they were kids I couldn't charge originally. And I knew they beat an old man with a bat when they were young. And then they grew up and they become heroin traffickers. And I watched it because, and this is just an aside, but I worked at barracks twice. Once as a trooper, 10 years later came back as an investigator because state troopers move around, right? And I saw the same family, I won't name names, grow up and the same thing. So my point is, I'm a big proponent of parenting, and when you show that you care and you show that you have boundaries, I think you're starting at a good place. That said, this does become down to opinion. I'm a very big proponent of education. There's guns in my house. Not because I'm a gun nut, but because I'm a police officer, and I believe that guns save lives. They save lives of people. That's what they are, as tools. None of my guns are a threat to anyone in that house unless you are there to do harm to us. Meaning my girls have been educated on firearm safety, right? And I've taught them accordingly. And sadly, I tried not to rob them of their childhood, but they knew a lot about what Dad did at a very young age. And I told them the perils and the pitfalls of the things you do. You don't do like that second video, the sexting video I think is outstanding. It gives such a strong impression, but you realize she's got like a crop top and you see a shoulder. But your mind, using process of closure, right, fills in the rest. And the same kind of grooming, the same kind of activity, that's very well done. So I even told them, I said, listen, you don't have to be ashamed that you're a pretty girl. You're both pretty girls. You don't have to, I don't want you to be paranoid. I want you to be prudent is kind of the way I phrase it to all these kids. Be prudent. So when it's going to be, and you're going to hate my answer, it's going to be a cop-out. You want to know what we did? We live in Dover. It's a very rural area, and our kids became latchkey at a reasonably young age. We ended up getting them cell phones around that time, believe it or not. Around your children, just right about that age. I'm trying to think when we did specifically. They have about 600 feet to walk getting off the bus. And I mean, this is going back years to 2015. We just want another measure of, are they going to be okay, right? Let us know when you're home, that kind of thing. With the proviso that, in my case, and I don't want to go on record and then have people up in arms, just for me, because it's my opinion, everybody, based on where I've seen bad things, and bad things can happen on any app, no Snapchat and no TikTok. And I know TikTok's the most popular thing, and I would tell you why. It's a personal choice, but I'm going to tell you, the proliferation of bad traffic, and by bad traffic I mean child sex abuse material, and where the pedophiles were prolific on apps like those two. And so there was no good reason for it. So in terms of apps, I allow them to use social media very carefully. They know they are to surrender their phones. They know I'm a super nice guy, but I'm no nonsense at home, doing what I did and all that. But again, kind of the nature that I impart to your students, and it's an honor to do so, is literally an extension of how I parented my kids. It's mostly like, listen, I really care. I'm really worried about you. Don't make a mistake that invites evil to your door or our door. So I mainly think that they lack the cognition, they lack the development to know what a good choice is. Can I recommend it? No. And now the Surgeon General is saying, have you heard the new recommendation? Surgeon General is now saying, and I don't want to state it wrong, has anyone heard the new Surgeon General recommendation on social media? Is it 18? Is it 16? Because I know they kept raising the age, so now it's 16. I'm sad to say it's probably a good idea, but then let me peel it back. My daughters are turning 18, going to college. The other one's turning 16. Well, don't you know my elder daughter is going to play soccer. She got recruited to play soccer, not for money, but she plays soccer. She, and specifically my younger daughter, who's finishing her sophomore year, are required to have a social media profile even through soccer. So if they have nothing else, it's almost like you can't unring that bell Once we opened the Pandora's box of the internet and we found how apps are so easy, right, and they're free. So they're going to have a social media somehow. So it's almost like, if you pardon me running on, kind of get them used to the fact that it's like a necessary evil. It's a tool. It's the street. It's a gun. It's the internet. It's something that is a very useful tool. You just have to know how you can get harmed out there. And I'm knocking wood. So far, so good. But that's a great question. It's going to be at the discretion of the parents. And I'm a big proponent of anything that helps you sleep well at night if you care about your kids. So you're welcome. Yes. Yes. Oh. You are so right. I don't need to cut in. I got to tell you, true story, I did a parents' presentation at Dover Schools, and during the presentation, that's how Roblox. Parents came up to me and said, oh my gosh, our 9-year-old twins were staying with Grandma and Grandpa. Where do you live? What school do you go to? I don't need to spell out the rest. It's this is what's weird. We're going to put this on the World Wide Web. I have a kind of a personal YouTube channel. I'm hoping maybe I put this presentation on I have a professional one too, right? So I want to be careful. Will I get sued by Roblox, TikTok, and Snapchat? Okay, here's what's up. If there's really no purpose to it, other than a lot of side chatter, I would say pick accordingly, choose accordingly. That's another one. Once I heard about Roblox, and then we started getting reports professionally from Roblox referrals, it's just those people who are inclined to make kids into victims go where the kids are. That's a big part, like fishing. I hate to say it. You fish where the pond is stocked with fish. Well, if the kids are there, and think about quarantine. Okay, as it pertains to what we call cyber tips, which has to do with child exploitation. During quarantine, just as we came out in 21, if you will, as it kind of waned, right about the time I retired, the cyber tips were up 600%. Everybody's home and more people are social, right? They're remote. And because of that, their traffic went up, and so the perpetrators. So yes, Roblox. And if you had, was there more to your question? Because that's a great one. And it's the exact same thing. The parents were like, oh, it's just a fun game and it's cute. No, it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing. I just picture not good adults in their basement with headsets on, chatting with your kids and taking notes. And I'm not a specialist when it comes to network intrusion. I'm more of a hands-on forensics, and I've done reactive undercover work, right? But when it comes to like hacking, let's say, there are people who can do, and I think it's called a side hack, if they get in these chat rooms. If I have any computer nerds, please feel free to pipe in and educate me. But they can, with very little social engineering, can also obtain your IP, meaning, where you live, basically, and they can extrapolate that. So yeah, to finish, actually combine your answer for you and for you. My younger daughter is she's an anime nerd, draws anime, has a YouTube channel, it's cute, loves video games. She's like one of those nerdy, fun kids. She's awesome. Of course, she's my kid. But she loves doing anime. She loves playing video games. The one thing I did do, and I should have mentioned this before, 0 online gaming. Computers are complex enough. She has a PS4. She's had Wii, all this stuff. If that has an online component, no. And that's where, it might sound more like the typical police officer. Absolutely no. Why? There's no real reason for it. If you want to meet your friend, this is one of the reasons I bring up the dirt bike slides or the dirt bike videos. Do something real for a change. You want to meet your friend and play a game? My kids both play soccer. Kick a soccer ball, shoot some hoops, hit a baseball, ride a dirt bike, skin your knee, go hiking. I should have admitted this earlier. I'm a big fan of that, and I do push that to kids. Go and do something real, my goodness. The reason I have YouTube, it's fun for me, but if anyone goes to my channel, it's my real name. Chickens, my wife has chickens, our crazy dog, dirt bike videos, and skiing. Literally, it's us doing stuff outdoors that's real. And the YouTube channel is just something to do for fun, but it's not where my life is. So I make a big lesson out of that for my kids and for anyone who'll listen about doing something real, certainly. Right. Oh, someone's back from sports. All right. Any other questions? Not even familiar? Right. Oh, there's a new VR game out? Yeah, these are coming out, and that's a good point. You're in there with strangers, right. We got to the point in the unit when I was still active in the State Police Computer Crime Unit, we didn't bother being proactively researching. We just had to be reactive because the apps are so prolific. You know, one kind of wanes in popularity, another one gets developed, or a new gaming platform gets developed. And they all, when they get popular, they have that kind of communal, everybody puts on a headset and chats and they talk smack. There's even something, it's moderately funny, kind of in a dark way, where people will, you know, kind of razz each other, bust each other's stones online. You know, with the gaming, you might have seen that in some videos. And that's one thing if it's adults, but when you don't know these people, and for our purposes, I don't ever think you do. I really don't. That's why I don't online game either. There's just no value to it. I would much rather do something in person. And I've done these presentations virtually and done some training this way. I much, much, much prefer doing this in person. Look you right in the eye, you see my earnestness, you can hear tone. All of that. So I'm a big proponent of in-person and as real as we can make it, you know. Any other questions? I think that's going to wrap it up for me. I'm really appreciative. Thank you for coming out tonight, and I'll be educating your kids soon, I hope. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.